All right, we are going to finish up Unit 6 with the urinary system. So we're going to talk partly about the kidneys, but also what else is down the chain. And so this has a little less conceptual stuff than our endocrine chapter that we just looked at. So in terms of your studying, focus on the endocrine system in terms of knowing your hormones and their locations and the different glands. The urinary system, some of the anatomy, of course, is important, and we'll go through that, but a majority of it on the test will be challenging your vocab with the new list for the urinary system. All right, here's a quick review from our last one. I know a lot of people struggle with some of the abbreviations. They're a little tougher to remember than our prefixes and word roots and suffixes. So here are a few that are related to the endocrine system. So go ahead, see which ones you can get down. If there's certain ones you miss, know that you just need to go back and look at those a couple more times. So take care of that on your own time there. Take a look. And so any of these, if you don't quite understand what they are or why they are in this list, then please shoot me an email. But other than that, it's just a good review. All right, so as I said, our urinary system and kidneys are the big workforce in our urinary system. So in our x-ray here, you can see our kidneys are kind of this bean shape. That's why they call them a kidney bean. And so they sit just distal to your rib cage, just inferior to the rib cage. And then you can see we have two ureters, which are these tubes that are going to carry our urine from the kidneys to the bladder itself. Now, if I'm looking down here, you can see we have two different combining forms for kidney, rene/O and neph/O. So renal, anytime you see rene or renal, that's going to be related to the kidneys. And then this nephro combining form comes into play when we look at our nephron, or the functional unit of the kidney. So if you see here, we're going to zoom in a couple times. So we're going to start over here zoomed in. So this structure here is what is known as a nephron. So our nephron is really the functional unit of our kidney and urinary system. And this is how we're actually going to make our urine. So we have our glomerulus here. This is a bundle of capillaries that are coming into our nephron. And so glomerule/O, that's our combining form for glomerulus specifically. So these capillaries are under super high pressure. And so that means that some of the fluid portion of blood and formed elements, such as proteins, cells, are going to be forced out of those capillaries. And we have this little U catching that fluid called the Bowman's capsule. So our Bowman's capsule is going to collect that fluid. And then you see we have a bit of a loop through here. And eventually we're going to go down through our tubule. So like I said, fluid, or really water and other substances, are forced out here. Our Bowman's capsule is going to collect it. And then a large majority of the fluid and the substances are going to be reabsorbed by this first part of our loop here. In the second part of our loop, as we get towards our tubule here, we're going to put stuff, kind of waste, back in, or get rid of what we want to get rid of. And then as we travel down the loop, we'll eventually get to the ureter. So now we're going to go kind of back this way. So pyelo is our combining form for a renal pelvis. And so each part of our kidney has these segments known as different segments of our renal pelvis. And so each of these segments is going to have multiple nephrons, and they function or flow down into the renal pelvis, where they're going to collect that urine. So these are our calyces, our major calyces up here. You get to your minor calyx down low, and then eventually we get all the way to where it groups as the renal pelvis. So we touched on it a little bit in that last slide, but there's three primary steps to urine formation. The first one is filtration. So that happens at those glomerular capillaries. And so here's our Bowman's capsule. So this is where we're filtering out. So water and solutes, really small proteins and smaller substances like sodium, sugar, urea, nitric acid is going to be forced through our capillary walls. Sorry, I said nitric acid. I meant nitrogen, guys. So all those substances in fluid are going to be forced through the walls because this is under super high pressure here. And so when our body needs to filter more out, we'll increase the pressure. If we're filtering too much, then we'll decrease that pressure. So we have a little bit of rate control here. So the first step is actually going to be reabsorption. So as I said, a majority of that water, glucose, amino acids, all the other substances, our body decides, hey, we actually want to hold on to those. We might need those again. And so that's going to go from our tubule back into our bloodstream there. We're also going to get secretion, so stuff like hydrogen, potassium, creatine, or really creatinine, other wastes and stuff that we do want to get rid of are going to be this last part. We're going to get rid of anything that we have too much of or that we really don't need. So in terms of our pathology, there's a lot of different types of itises as it relates to our kidneys. So interstitial nephritis, that is when we actually get an infection in our bladder. And remember, our kidneys connect to our ureters, which travel down to our bladder. And so when it comes to germs, the kind of opposite pathway is in play. So an interstitial nephritis will have some kind of a bladder infection that ends up traveling up and affecting the kidneys. Now, this can happen vice versa as well. You can have one of these guys where we're having something start in the kidneys and it travel down. So cystitis is going to be just that, where we have some issue with our kidney, and it's going to cause inflammation of the bladder. So cystitis. So cyst is one of our roots for bladder. You'll also see the root or combining form vesic/O. So both of those are bladder. There's a couple examples that have multiple roots in this chapter. Pyelonephritis, we're talking about the renal pelvis itself, so that segment. And then glomerulonephritis, we're being even a little more specific. It's actually the capillaries, the glomerulus, that is the source of our inflammation. So just kind of keep an eye on itis is not just the kidneys. Think of our other parts of our other roots and what that actually means when we're being specific with our words. So that kind of just gives you a little more info there. I'm going to skip this next one. Okay, a couple other kidney pathologies. So take a second, use your new list, and see if you can come up with a few words that would match up with these pathologies. So go ahead and pause your video now, see if you can come up with the words, and then start it again when you're ready. So hydronephrosis, our word hydro here is for water. In this case, it's going to be overloaded with urine. That's the fluid in this case. So hydronephrosis is the abnormal condition of a fluid or urine overload on the kidney. Nephrolithiasis. So this is going to be the term for kidney stones, the condition of kidney stones. So nephro, remember, is one of our roots for kidney. Lith is the root for stone. And in this last one, you see extracorporeal, meaning outside of the body, shockwave lithotripsy. And sometimes you'll just see it abbreviated or shortened to this lithotripsy word. So extracorporeal, like I said, outside of the body. Shockwave is a little misleading because it doesn't actually, it's not generated from a shock. It's really a sound wave. And so what's happening here is that they're using sound waves to travel deep into the kidney and then we can use those sound waves to vibrate and break up or crush those stones. So lith again is stone, and then tripsy is a new suffix for crushing. Okay, a little bit more medical term, just kind of practice review with our new words for the urinary system. So again, go ahead and pause the video here, go through your words, try to get these right, and when you're ready, we can go on to the answer slide. So nothing too much to explain to you guys here. So PT is just pertaining to above the kidney, if you just were wondering what that is. And then this PO, it's the process of. So just to shorten it so it fit in the box for you guys. I don't want that to be confusing. Everything else should be pretty straightforward there. All right, this time a little more practice with the words more associated with our bladder and urine. So again, pause the video, and when you're ready, go ahead and start it again. So micturition, the abnormal condition of passing urine. So micturition is the process of voiding urine. That's our fancy medical word for urinating. CO is just condition of. So anytime you see this ending uria, URIA, you know it's referring to a condition related to the urine. So remember in our previous chapters, we've had emia, EMIA, and so that's specific to a blood condition, but uria is going to be a urinary condition. Again, this ACO is just abnormal condition of, and our COs are condition of. Uresis is another suffix, a little different than urea. So urea is a condition in the urine. Uresis refers to urination itself. So nocto and uresis is going to be complaining of urination at night. Cystectomy, you see our cysts. So if you saw the word vesicectomy, it would mean the same thing. So remember, cyst and vesic are both roots for bladder. One other one that I'll point out here, ketonuria. If you've never heard of the term ketones, that is a byproduct of when our body is utilizing fat as a source of fuel. So if someone, this is relatively common in diabetes, if they're not utilizing their glucose properly, their body will start to utilize fats, and that results in ketonuria. All right, so that is the end of this one. Pretty short one for you guys here. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of concepts. So just know we start up in our kidneys. That's where the urine is filtered. It's reabsorbed and then secreted. That travels to our bladder via the ureters. And then our bladder is able to kind of contract or work as a reflex that tells us we need to urinate when it's stretched or filled enough. One other thing that I wanted to bring up as just kind of a good, nice to know, especially for those of you that may be taking anatomy and physiology currently or in the future, one of the only differences in the male versus female urinary system is the actual length of the urethra. So we said we go from kidneys down to the ureters to the bladder, and then we have our urethra, which is going to actually carry urine from the bladder to our external environment. So in males, the urethra is rather long. So in females, the urethra is quite short, and that doesn't really cause any issues functionally. But what it does change is the predisposition to a urinary tract infection or a UTI. So that's definitely an abbreviation you should know, very common diagnosed. But because females have a relatively short path from the external environment to the bladder or a short urethra, it's much easier for bacteria, viruses, anything that's going to cause an infection to actually get into the system. So these are our only two lectures for the Unit 6 exam, and then we only have one more unit to finish up for the semester. So keep going strong, guys.